All right, in this explainer, we're doing one thing: following the money. We're going to dig into a source that makes a pretty bold claim that a lot of the street protests we see on the news, well, they might not be what they seem. So let's dive right in.
You know, it's a question that pops up pretty much every time you see those huge demonstrations on TV. Is this just a spontaneous burst of passion from the people, or is there something, more organized happening behind the scenes? Well, the source we're digging into today, it argues pretty strongly for that second option.
And this quote from our source, it really cuts right to the chase. The idea here is that what looks like a totally organic grassroots movement might actually be a very carefully managed campaign. It's a strategy that some experts are calling narrative warfare. And to really get what our source is claiming, we've got to unpack what that term actually means.
Okay, so first up, the agitprop network. Let's really unpack the theory that's being presented here.
Now, according to the source, we're talking about something that goes way beyond just signs and chants. They describe it as a full-on psychological operation that's designed to shape how we all think and feel through storytelling. So the big question is, how do they deliver that story? Well, that method actually has a name: agitprop. And the term itself, it's not new. It has roots in early Soviet Russia. It describes the strategy of using mass media, art, you name it, to agitate the public, really stir up strong emotions, and then use that energy to spread an ideology and get people on board. The source we're looking at claims this is the engine that's really driving people into the streets.
All right, that brings us to Section 2, following the money trail. Because if this really is an organized campaign, the source says the proof isn't hidden. It's in the financial records. So let's take a look at the exact method they describe.
So the method they lay out isn't some kind of secret spy mission. Nope, it actually relies on public information that anyone can find. It starts with a simple step: identify the groups that are publicly leading the protests. From there, you go find their IRS 990 filings. And if you're not familiar with those, they're basically public tax documents that nonprofits have to file. And they detail everything: who the big donors are, what they're spending money on, what their stated mission is. It's all right there, out in the open.
So, when you use this method, who does it actually point to? Well, the source names several organizations that describe themselves as Marxist-Leninist, and it alleges that the money trail often leads back to one key individual, a man named Neville Roy Singham. He's described as a US-born millionaire, now based in Shanghai, who they claim is a major funder for this whole network.
And this is a really key point. According to the source, we're not talking about small, struggling grassroots groups here. They're described as multi-million-dollar organizations, and many of them are registered as nonprofits, which means they can get tax benefits while, as the source alleges, they push what's described as a really disruptive agenda.
Okay, on to part 3, architects and foot soldiers. So the source describes this two-tiered structure that's supposedly behind the entire movement.
So here's how they break it down. On one side, you've got the architects. Think of them as the masterminds, the big money organizations, the wealthy funders who are planning the whole strategy. And then on the other side, you have the foot soldiers. These are the people you actually see on the street, the activists on the ground. They provide the bodies, creating that powerful visual of a massive popular uprising, what the source calls the myth of the marching millions.
So you might be wondering, how do you get all those foot soldiers to actually mobilize? Well, according to the source, the key is something they call hijacking empathy. The idea is that organizers take these really complex global issues and frame them in very simple, highly emotional terms. This taps right into people's natural desire to do good and help others, getting them out on the streets, often without them ever needing to know the bigger, more strategic picture. And what's the end game here? What's the overarching goal of all this, at least according to the source? Well, they claim the ultimate mission is to frame the United States as a colonial empire or an imperial power. It's about connecting all these different global issues, Palestine, Venezuela, immigration, you name it, and tying them all together into one single struggle. And the final objective, the source alleges, is nothing less than the overthrow of the U.S. free enterprise system.
So after laying out all these claims from the source, it kind of leaves us with this big fundamental question about modern activism, right? Where do you draw the line? Where does that genuine grassroots passion end and the professionally orchestrated influence begin? It's a tricky one, and it's definitely something to think about the next time you see those headlines about a protest lighting up your screen.